So today we are talking about more of the right questions to ask, how to think about it when scaling your business, what that actually looks like, all of that good stuff. I definitely want to focus more on the strategy piece today. Obviously, there are plenty of amazing mindset questions you can ask yourself for scaling as well. But today we're going to talk predominantly about the strategy side of it. Cool. All right. So basically, the first kind of thing I want to talk about as it relates to this is that where we usually go wrong when we're thinking of like what questions to ask ourselves around scaling is that we're very, very much focused on macro versus micro. Okay. So what I mean by that is we're asking like big questions like, will video work for me? Or like, will Facebook groups work? Or why aren't Facebook groups working for me? Or whatever. We're asking very, very like top level broad questions. And what I have found to be true the longer I've been coaching and doing this is that those questions are a really fast way to keep building and burning down your business and really feeling stuck and doing what I talk about all the time, which is shifting strategies instead of stacking them. Because you're asking these really broad questions that are really not going to serve you to actually learn what's going on in your business and to actually make better progress. And so I'll give you a ton of examples of those, but that's kind of like just the first level set I want to do here is that if you are asking very broad, again, like micro or macro over micro kind of questions in your business, it is going to be really hard to scale, right? Because everything is going to be so black or white and so much yes or no. So it's like, why aren't Facebook groups working for me? And then you're like getting out of groups, or why, is video going to work, or is video going to be right for me? And then you're deciding yes or no, and it feels so all or nothing. And that's just not where good strategy is made. So a way that I think about this is if you think about like a lot of really like amazing top level athletes, like think about athletes that are doing like Ironman races, right? So I know a little bit about this because my ex-husband used to do that and I used to kind of be in that world. And so what I learned so much from watching that is that a lot of people that weren't having like the success they wanted to would make these very, very huge changes to their strategy. Like they would have a bad race and then they would basically, change everything, like change their whole nutrition plan, change the type and brand of shoes they're wearing, change who they were coaching with, like all of these huge, huge changes. And so number one, they were basically starting over all the time. And number two, they couldn't really figure out what was wrong ever. So they were just having these huge swings all the time, where the ones that were like really seeing success and really getting better over time were tweaking the littlest things. Like we're talking about like, what's one small tweak I can make to my nutrition at mile 14 of the run so that I get less, cramps there or whatever. Like that level of precision and detail. And then they were going back out and doing a race with just that one metric changed, right? And seeing what happened and usually seeing significant improvement. But if I'm changing so many of those things, like if I'm changing my whole nutrition plan, I'm basically back to square one. I don't have data to go off of and I'm just guessing again. And that's what so many people do in business is they're making such sweeping changes and asking such broad scale questions that they never get down into the details to figure out what's actually working, what's actually not, what's actually going on. And so they're in this perpetual cycle of feeling really overwhelmed and really frustrated because it seems like nothing's working, but also because they're not getting enough data to figure out what's working or what's not. Does that make sense? Let me know if you're listening, if that makes sense. Hi, Shari. Shari's just excited to take a break and join you. Thank you. Thank you. Also, those curls today. Thank you, Shari. I've been working very hard on my curl game lately, so I really appreciate you. I also got this new thing. Now everyone listening to this is gonna be like, oh my God, why did you say that, Shari? No, I'm kidding. But I got this new thing called a steam pod. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It is amazing. And it's kind of like a straightener, but it's steam. And so it's like less damaging to your hair, but you can also make waves with it if you like twist it and stuff. So good. So cool. Obsessed. Michelle says, you might answer this, but how do we figure out what details are the important ones? Because I definitely have a tendency to get stuck in the weeds. That's a great question. I'll totally answer that. But basically that's how to ask better questions. Let's just start with that as the gist, is by getting into the details. So that is the way you're going to ask better questions. If you find yourself, like, this is just like a trigger I want you to pay attention to. If you find yourself answering the really big questions, like, or asking yourself the really big questions, like, I would just use the Facebook group one again, but like, why don't Facebook groups work for me? Totally wrong question. So I'll break that question down specifically just so you can see what details I'm going to get into. But definitely went and Googled steam pods. It is so, I think it's L'Oreal. I'm pretty sure it's L'Oreal, Michelle. I can check. It's really good though. But anyway, so I'll get into the nitty gritty of like how to break down that question a little bit, but it really is so helpful to see that. So I just want you to catch yourself. This is something I am catching clients on all the time. Like one of my clients has a joke that she basically like if she's in a launch, she tries to bring like detailed like data to every one of our calls because she gets so annoyed because she'll come to me and be like, oh, well, XYZ is happening. And I'm like, but what about this? And what about this? And did you look at this and whatever? And she's like, I just can't get on a fucking call with you anymore without pulling this stuff because I know you're going to ask me all this shit and I'm not going to have it ready. But it is that. It's like, we really need someone saying to us, like, no, we have to get into the details or it's seriously going to keep you stuck. So we'll go through all of that. Shari says, that's what I need. I finally learned how to curl my hair using a straightener of all things, but it's been burning my hair. So I think I was meant to join this live for this exact purpose. Oh my God, Shari, it's going to be so life-changing then. Yes. YouTubers are all over it. It's definitely L'Oreal. Okay. Yeah. There are a ton of videos too, Shari. So if you get it, they will teach you all the things. I had to watch videos myself for sure. So funny. I love that. Okay, cool. So let's just kind of go through the Facebook one as an example. And then, if you're listening and you have like a broad question that you've been sitting with, feel free to drop it in the chat and I can even use that as an example to go through specifics. But so like if a client came to me and was like, I think Facebook groups aren't working for me, I would be like, that's not a real thing. Right. And so here is why I don't go macro, because that is not a thing. Like Facebook doesn't, even people will say Facebook doesn't work for me. What? Like nothing about that makes sense. Like Facebook is a tool. Okay. That's all it is. Facebook is a tool with millions and millions and millions of people on it. And it is just that. So it's basically like being this, like the steam pod doesn't work for me. And it's like, well, the steam pod just fundamentally works. Do you need to watch more videos? Like what's not working about it? Like, do you see what I mean? And so it's like Facebook works. Like if you want to get in front of people, there's a market on Facebook for you, I promise. Right. And so it works, right? It's just, are you figuring out how to make it work? Right. So you see how it kind of is like funny almost when we're asking those broad questions, because it's not a thing, right? Do you see what I mean? But it's like, oh, Instagram doesn't work for me, or are my people on Instagram? Yeah, like Instagram can work for anyone. It's just, what are we doing with it, right? We have to see these things as a tool. Or like video doesn't work for me. Again, video just fundamentally works. Video is working super, super well right now on social. So like, doesn't not work for you, right? If you get me, you tell me, but it's just funny when we think about it like that, because we're just so tempted to make it so, like black or white like that. And there's always just gray area. Like Facebook might not work for you if you're using it in XYZ way and your audience is using it in XYZ other way and you're not meeting up there or whatever. Like, cool, let's get into the nitty gritty. But like as a platform, it works. As a as a tool, video works really well. Does that make sense? Yes, Claire says 100% Facebook works. Shari says, I may or may not be having this exact conversation in DMs with someone right now. The tool is neutral. It's more about what we're trying to do with it. Exactly. So you can see how that's why those like really broad statements don't make any sense, and get us really stuck because we never get to find the details around them, and they're just fundamentally not true. But if I'm building something up in my head like Instagram doesn't work for me, Instagram doesn't work for me, why isn't Instagram working for me? Like I'm just keeping myself so stuck, and I'm creating this like negative mindset relationship with all of these tools that could be really, really, really helpful for me, right? So we'll go with the Facebook group thing. Facebook groups don't work for me. So if a client said that to me, I would be like, well, specifically what's not working about them? And they would be like, I'm not getting clients. They don't work. And I'm like, okay, well, there are several steps to getting clients. And so which piece of that step isn't working? Like, is it that, you're putting, content out and no one's engaging? Or is it that they are engaging, but they're not taking a next step and converting to a call? Or is it that they're getting on a call, but they're not buying on the call? Like there are so many pieces to that. So you see how like it's a tool used to make certain things happen, used to create engagement, which creates more interest, which creates a call, which then creates a conversion, right? So a lot of people are just kind of looking at it very broad scale, and it's like, but there are about 4 subsets of that one thing of Facebook. And so which of those actually isn't working? And for, people, it will be totally different. So it might be like, well, I'm just not getting the engagement. Okay, great. What is happening with that? Like we can even get more specific there. Like, is it on certain posts you are and on certain posts you're not? Is it on none of them that you are? Are you engaging with other people so that the algorithm, is favoring showing your stuff to other people? Is it that, you're posting in 30 places and not building up traction in any of them? Or are you just posting in one? Like what's actually going on there, right? You see how there are so many details we need to be looking at there to be able to actually find the right data. And if we can find the right data, we can really, oh my gosh, sorry guys, my dog is like laying on my light. It's like about to fall on my face. If we're asking the right questions and we're looking at the right data, we can actually make tweaks that are really, really effective in business. So if that client was saying to me like, well, actually, I'm whatever, like these type of posts are getting a decent amount, but whenever I post this, it's not. And so, I can't figure out what's going on there. Well, we can literally look at those 2 types of posts and be like, oh, well, your audience is really responsive when you talk about this, but they're way less responsive when you talk about this. So that actually makes a lot of sense. Like, how do we tweak that? How do we even tweak that on a sales page? How do we use that for other things? How do we, learn from that? Or if it was like, nobody's engaging on anything, but I'm posting in 30 places, but I'm not doing any engagement. Okay, great. Then we really got to get you narrowed in on where you're posting and showing up. And we have to get you really engaging so that it's a 2-way street and so that the algorithm favors it, all these other things, right? But you can see how even just in that, our solution would be so different based on like what's actually happening, right? So that's really, really important to see, because it's not just like, again, this macro of like Facebook groups aren't working. Well, there could be like 3,500 reasons that's not true. So I can't even give you a reasonable suggestion as a coach because I don't know what's actually going on, right? Now you can find someone that on the internet that'll say, well, if Facebook groups aren't working for you, this is the one thing you have to do, and da-da-da. But again, that's bullshit because you don't know what's actually true for your business and what's actually happening for your business, right? And so it's really important to be paying attention to those things and seeing that, because it's not actually going to be relevant to you potentially. Because what if you're not even one of those people who people aren't engaging with? Maybe you're someone who you're like, yes, people are engaging and they're getting on a call, but everyone I've gotten on a call with from Facebook hasn't converted yet. Okay, great. Then you might have a totally different problem. Like you might have a problem with your discovery call conversions that has jack shit to do with Facebook, right? But someone will say on the internet to you, well, if people aren't converting from groups, then like, here's what you need to do. It like, it doesn't matter, right? Because if that might not be true for you and your business. And so getting so in the details and like in the weeds even is so valuable there, because you can see how in those three examples I gave, we would do drastically different things. One might be whatever, totally revamp how you're running sales calls. One might be totally change some of your messaging. And another one might be like narrow in how many places you're posting and engage more. Those are vastly different. And I wouldn't know what was right for you unless I was able to get into the detail of that conversation and of what was specifically happening in your business. Does that make sense? If you're listening, tell me if that makes sense to you. Michelle says, love the emphatic clap. I did that on stories today because I was really excited about what I was talking about. I know, same. I'm like, yes, right? But it's just true. This is a very, very important thing. So thank you, Michelle. But I think that is like such a prime example, because you can see that. And I would really be thinking about that even in like, your coaches and mentors, right? Like, are they helping you look at it through that lens? Or if you're just going to them saying, okay, Facebook groups just aren't working for me, they're like, okay, let's get you on Instagram. Like, no. Maybe, like, it doesn't mean you could never go on Instagram, but unless we solve what's not working, it's still not going to be working on Instagram. Because again, the platform is just a tool, right? And so like, let's say I was saying to, someone, hey, like, it's not working for me in Facebook groups. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, let's get you an Instagram strategy. And then I go start posting on Instagram. And then I finally get to the point where I'm getting people on calls from Instagram. But the problem was actually my discovery call process all along. Now I'm just getting people on the phone from Instagram that are also not converting, but I wasted a fuck ton of time leaving Facebook, rebuilding my strategy on Instagram, getting new people on the phone over there, right? And it's like, we're solving the wrong problem, because we went so macro that we never got into the details. But if you get into the details on one thing you're doing or one platform, it will apply everywhere. So for example, going back to where I said, say we notice that that your audience is really responding to some posts and not others, that would be epic information. And then you can go apply that to other things. I could apply it to my sales page. I could apply it to my other platforms. I could apply it to my Instagram, right? So you see how solving a really good problem in one place can affect the entirety of your business, right? Really, really important to see that. Aw, thank you, Brittany. Can you share some of the reasons why sharing in other Facebook groups falls flat? I mean, right, totally depends, but I think that it certainly could be any of those things I just said. Oh my gosh, Riley, you're killing me. If you guys see this light ring come like crashing into my face, try not to laugh too hard, please. But basically, one of the reasons might be like, are you in the right groups? Are your people actually in those groups? Do we know that? If you know that that's true, are they engaging with some content, not others? Can you get detailed and pay attention to what seems to be resonating more frequently, what seems to not be? Are they not responding at all? Then I would really say, like, are you engaging? So the number one thing that I can see that makes a difference in this Facebook group is people who engage just get a lot more reach. So if you all have a Facebook group, you probably know this, but basically we have like my Facebook group that I can see how much reach every post is getting. It'll show me like the stats on every post. And the biggest difference maker I see is just how much is that person like otherwise engaging with people and being kind of like a real member of the community, I think Facebook is definitely rewarding authentic interaction and engagement right now. And so if you're just posting in a bunch of places and leaving and not otherwise engaging or interacting, Facebook's just not rewarding that at all right now. So, if you're someone that, is just jumping in a group, posting and running, I mean, your reach could be like 10 people in a 15,000 person group, right? And so that's another thing is like, how can I like really get invested in a handful of communities and be very, very engaged in those? That would probably be my biggest suggestion. And then the last one would be like, are people just seeing it and they're not engaging, but you could still really be getting clients? Like, are you making pitches, et cetera? And like, wouldn't it be interesting to see like, well, do people take me up on my pitches, even if they're not super engaged on a post by like liking it or whatever, right? Because for me, that's true of so many of my clients, like so many clients that I can think of right now that like booked a discovery call with me. Like obviously when I was booking calls, booked a discovery call with me and I was like, oh, I've never even heard of their name. And then they'll get on the phone with me and they'll be like, oh, I've been watching your videos for years. Right. And I'm like, you've never even liked one. So like, what's up with that? So anyway, those are like a million different reasons. So I hope that helps Brittany, but I hope that also illustrates for everyone else, whether you care about the Facebook group thing or not, how detailed strategy needs to be and how much we have to be thinking through those steps and how we don't want to tweak like a million things at once because then you never figure out what it actually is. So Brittany, if you joined late, I was using an example at the beginning of how like a lot of athletes that are like doing like these big Ironman races and stuff, like the ones that are having really big success are tweaking like one little thing each race so they can figure out what's actually working, what actually makes a difference, versus if we make huge tweaks, right, in our strategy, whether that's like athletic performance or business, we never know what's actually working or not working or what's actually wrong. And we end up feeling really disempowered because we don't understand what's going wrong. So it's just like that example I gave where it's like, if I don't understand what's going wrong on Facebook and I jump to Instagram, I'm just going to have the same issues, right? So like taking the time to fully get detailed and ask the little particular detailed questions always is going to make the biggest difference. And it's going to give you the most power because you're going to understand what's actually happening. And then you can go apply that across platforms. Shari says, never underestimate the silent lurkers in a non-creepy way. Tristan, I think I saw that you commented, but it disappeared for me. Tell me if you had something else there. Rhiannon said, that was so me. Hello, I've been watching you forever and have never engaged once and wonder why my business isn't growing. LOL. So funny, Rhiannon. Hi, Jen. Right. It's so true though. Right. Where it's like that. So that totally could be like, you might just have people that are always silent lurkers that buy from you. And that can be totally okay too. It's not like we're saying engagement has to be the end all be all, but it is an important question to be asking. And again, it's so important to get into the details. Like for example, one of my clients, when she came to me, she was really predominantly on Instagram, but she has a business that's very, what's the word I would use? Like it's sensitive. It's a sensitive topic. It's a sensitive subject matter. And so she was getting like almost no engagement on Instagram and was getting pretty frustrated. And when she came to me, we kind of like dug into the details. We asked questions about her ideal client, whatever. And we were like, well, it just makes sense. They really need like a safe space to engage. How do we just give them that? Right. And so she created a Facebook group and it really, really, really took off. So sometimes we do move the platform, but it was for a very specific and intentional reason that only applied to like her audience and her type of thing, where for someone else, I would never necessarily give that advice. Right. So, it doesn't mean you never move a platform or you never do any of those things. It's just fully knowing and understanding so clearly the reason behind it and being so in the like micro details of it to know that that's the right strategy tweak to make, right? Hi, Milana. Thank you for being here. Okay, cool. So if any of you guys, I think I said this earlier, but if any of y'all listening have any specific big macro business questions that you're kind of sitting with and you want me to kind of break one down, I'm super happy to do that. Feel free to put it in the chat. But the big takeaway is start asking the right questions by getting super granular and super detailed, and also really make sure you're having coaching and mentorship that asks the granular questions too, right? And so something that I think gets weird for people here that I'll just talk about is like some of my clients really like the data almost too much that it becomes like, you know, like they're deciding it means something about their success. And some of my clients don't like it at all. And so then when I ask about it, it's almost like triggering and they're like, oh my God, no, I don't want to look, you know? And so what I just want you to see here is that getting into this level of data and this kind of like level of detail, it doesn't mean we're saying you can't be successful or you can't still have what you want, or like these numbers are the only thing dictating your result. It's not that at all. Like most of my clients, like when we look at like details, a lot of the details like don't make sense for the amount of success they're creating. And obviously that's a whole other mindset conversation. However, if you can be neutral about the data and the details and look at it as that neutral observer, you are really going to be able to do a lot with your business that then combined with that mindset takes your scaling just to a whole new level, right? So obviously you have to do the mindset work to get neutral around it. But when you can just, again, be that like neutral party that's like a detective looking at your own shit, it is so wildly helpful for being able to learn from it and grow from it. And if you're putting in all this work, you might as well be getting that data and that learning out of it instead of repeating the same mistakes and issues over and over again, right? Tristan said, such a big thing with body recomp and show prep too. That tweaks that made the difference are usually tiny, and to know what works and be able to replicate them show to show, you tweak one thing at a time. Perfect example. Exactly. Right? It's like if you change your entire meal plan and all your prep stuff, you're like, well, did that help? Did that not help? I don't even know what worked. I don't even know what didn't. Then you're like stressed more and more and more. Or if you test one thing, guess what? You know if it helped or if it didn't, and then you can move forward. And like that is counterintuitive because we usually want to change so many things because we want to get the result as fast as possible. But there's some irony in the fact that slows you down. And I think our brains just have a hard time computing that, right? Because we're like, well, if I do all the things, if I change all the things, then I'm way more likely to get a better result. And it's just not true. And business is like that too. It is so going to slow you down if you keep making all of those changes versus if you get into the details, right? I feel like you can find so many people in the online space that have just tried every tool, every platform, every offer, everything, and end up just feeling completely burnt out and frustrated and way behind the eight ball because they have no idea what is even going to work anymore. And they actually feel like none of it's going to work. Versus if you're tweaking one thing at a time, what's going to happen is some of it's going to work, some of it's not. You're going to learn from it. You're going to move forward way fucking faster, right? Megan says, I love triggering questions. So good. Me too, actually. Okay. So I basically will give you one more example because I think it's just helpful to go through it. But again, if y'all have any, happy to do that. But let's say that it's launching because that's a big one. So this is what I hear the most, and y'all are gonna laugh because it's so funny, but it's so true. A lot of people will come to me if their launch isn't kind of like going how they want it to go, and they'll be like, I think my audience just doesn't like this. Like, I think I just have to pick another thing. Like, we'll just scrap this one and I'll have to like do a new thing. And I'm like, wait, what? What do you mean your audience doesn't like that? What data is telling you that? Did someone say that? Like, what's telling you that? And they're like, it's just not going how I want it to go. I think they don't like it. Right. And that's what our brains do. Like I'm totally laughing because it's funny because we've all been there and we've all done that. Right. But that literally is what our brains will do. Right. My audience just doesn't like the thing. Like we go so macro, right? Milana says, I hate this idea. Exactly. They hate this idea. You said it last week. Totally. That's what we all say, right? Dina says, slowly realizing how many similarities there are between setting up my business and sending up my research studies. Good thing the last 17 years weren't for nothing. Oh my God. You are going to kill it in business if you've been doing research studies, trust me, because business is basically one big research study. And so if you have 17 years under your belt of that, you have got this, girl. I can tell you that for sure. This is totally it, right? And that's exactly what you're looking for, the nuance, the detail, and all of that, right? You're only going to tweak one thing at a time. It's so freaking similar. Michelle says, my brain's favorite version is that my audience can't afford this. Totally. And again, such a sweeping generalization, right? So it just helps for us to see this. So usually if a client comes to me and they're saying some version of like big, broad generalization, I'm like, okay, we really got to get into the specifics. What's your open rate? What's your click rate? What are our sales page views? What's our conversion rate off the sales page? How many people are actually getting to the sales page? How many put something in their cart? What are you hearing? Are people reaching out to you in the DMs? Do you have interest, but you're getting objections, or do you have no interest at all? Like those are all different problems we would solve, right? So let's just go to the very beginning. Say a client's like, I'm going to use Milana's. They hate my offer. I'm like, okay, what's your open rate right now? And it's like, say it's super low. Well, they don't hate your offer. They're just not opening, so they don't really know about it, right? So that would be a whole thing. Or, what are our sales page views? Okay, our sales page views are super low. So again, they don't hate the offer. They don't even know what's in the offer. How can we get them excited to go to a sales page, right? Or say all of that's good. Say we have high open rates, high click rates, high sales page views. No one's converting. Cool. We have a sales page problem. What's going on with our sales page? How do we make a tweak to the sales page? We have a ton of interest and we're not getting conversions. Or maybe it means that they have unaddressed objections. So have people been reaching out to you and telling you what they're struggling with? Can you go ask them what their objections are, right? There's so much nuance and detail in all of that that's going to tell us what action we can take and what we need to tweak. But again, if we're in that place of like, nope, they just hate it, our brain literally blocks us from going into the detail, right? And I have had clients completely turn launches around by going into the detail. I'll use one of my own as an example. Y'all know I don't launch anymore, but when I used to, I had launched value-centered sales as a course and was definitely not getting the uptake that I just had expected to at that time. And I was like, okay, well, this is interesting because we're getting really good open rates. We're getting a lot of click-through rates. We're getting a lot of sales page views. And we're getting a lot of people even like adding to cart. So like WTF is going on. And so what I decided to do was I decided to offer these like 15-minute calls to my audience. I was like, hey, if you're considering this course and you're not sure if it's right for you, jump on this 15-minute call with me, because I wanted to hear what was going on. I just knew there was something I was missing based on all of the metrics that I was able to look at. And so I get on those calls, and what almost every freaking person that got on one of these calls with me said was some version of, I don't think I'm ready for sales yet in my business. I was like really excited about it and I was interested in it, but I just don't think I'm ready for sales yet. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I would have, like, if I had made an entire list of 50 reasons why I thought people were not buying, that would not have been one of them, y'all. That, I can't even imagine on what planet that would have occurred to me, because for me, I'm like, well, you need sales the second you start your business. Like what? Because that's just like an ingrained belief that I have. But it was so fucking helpful. And I was able to take that. I switched stuff up on the sales page. I changed our last emails. I changed our social. Like I went into like full action mode, and we ended up having a really good launch. But if I hadn't gotten into that level of detail and been like, what's going on here? What needs tweaked here? What's the problem here? Cool. I see that there's some block and I don't know what it is. Let me just go talk to my audience, right? Found it out and was able to turn around a launch in the middle of a launch because I knew that information. Again, really important to say, it's not something I would have ever even fucking guessed. Right. So Michelle, like, for example, when your brain's, favorite version is my audience can't even afford this, like, maybe that's true. Maybe you have a ton of data and maybe that, your win is just speaking to that a lot more. Or maybe that's just like a totally broad guess and you have no fucking idea. Right. And our brain's just making something up. For me, it would have been so easy to make up 100 reasons why people weren't getting into this course. But like, again, I would have never guessed that one. And it was almost every single person told me that, which is crazy, right? Lana said, did you change the content specifically to address the fear of lack of readiness? Yeah. So what I kept hearing is like, I'm not ready for sales yet. Like, oh, I still have to get visible. I'm not ready for sales yet. But my sales course taught visibility. So I just reworked so much of our stuff to be like, hey, even if you aren't visible yet, this course is going to take you from A to Z in terms of like getting out there, getting more visible. Like and I did a lot of content on like, you need sales the second you start your business. If you think you need to wait on sales, you are also waiting on making money in your business. Here's what that looks like, et cetera, et cetera. And so I was able to speak to that just in a ton of different directions, so that it really started to land in a new way. But again, if I had just been like, they don't want this offer, well, nothing about the data was suggesting that was true, or whatever. They don't want to buy. Again, nothing about the data was suggesting that was true. So that's why it's really helpful to get into the granular and figure out what's actually going on. Michelle says it's definitely the top objection I get. So many of them are all jazzed and excited until they hear the price. They're not in the business world, so I don't think they know to make it to the bottom of the sales page to find the price. Too funny. Yeah, but like even that's really good. So you're like, okay, everything about this is good. My audience really wants this. They're really engaged with it. They want this. Cool. So all I have to do is speak to price objection all the time and give them a lot more information and context around that and solve the right problem. Because again, what a lot of people will do in the online space is if they just hear that objection from their audience all the time, they'll say, I have the wrong audience. I just have the wrong audience. I want an audience that does not have money objections. I have the wrong audience. And again, it's like, we're solving the wrong problem, because say you even fully change everything about your business and you get an entirely new audience and everyone in this audience has money, I promise you they will have a different objection, right? And so again, you just spent, I know you're not doing this, Michelle, I'm just saying it's what we do in the online space. You spend all this time, energy, and effort getting a whole new audience, and then come to find out they're going to have their own objection. It might not be money, but it's probably going to be something else, like say it's time. Right. So what you can just get really good at, and what, like, again, the micro would be, is what are the things that I've said that worked really, really well to help people get over that money fear? How can I put that out there more? How can that be in content more? How can I be speaking to that directly more? What has been really well received with that in the past? When I'm on calls and things like that, cool. How do I infuse that everywhere? And you see, like, that's when it gets good, because you're able to take what you've already done and what works, and then solve that one singular right problem, right? So even on a sales page, like if that's going to come up as an objection, let's just speak to that directly on a sales page. Let's get so detailed about putting it everywhere, right? And again, solving the right problem and having it get easier, making that one tweak to, oh, well, I just need to speak to money objections way more. Great, right? I'm going to need about 100 more intensives. Too funny, Michelle. I got you. No problem. Brittany says, I don't really do sales calls anymore, so I never hear objections, but I do get a lot of views on my sales page. Maybe I have unvoiced objections. Brittany, I think that's probably totally it. Potentially, I mean, if you're getting a lot of views and not a lot of sales, I would say it's either we really need to tweak the sales page, and it's just tweaking how we're speaking to it potentially, or it means you have quite a bit of objections that just aren't getting handled. So I would say like might be time to do some market research calls and some calls with your audience just to see what that is. And it'll probably feel like a literal gold mine to uncover what's really going on there. Even if you did like a quick 2-minute survey monkey thing to them, if you're super opposed to calls or whatever, and just kind of asking like what's been stopping them from taking action on XYZ thing, and see what comes up for people. But it's what's that saying? The devil is in the details, right? So figuring that out would probably make a huge difference, but you can see how helpful it is there. As an example of like getting that detailed of like, oh, wait, this makes sense. I'm not really on sales calls, so I'm really missing this part. And I do have a lot of sales page views, but I'm not getting the conversion rate that I would want. So what's actually going on here? Versus, again, it would be so easy to be like, I have the wrong audience, or like, they are not going to buy this offer, right? It's so different. Okay, cool. So that's pretty much it. Like, so just to be really specific in terms of asking yourself the right question, go as detailed as humanly possible, and really, really try to get down several layers and have it be a trigger to pay attention to if you find yourself asking these really, really big questions, or, making really big assumptions, i.e., again, Facebook doesn't work for me. No, Facebook is a neutral tool. Or i.e., like everyone in my audience hates my offer. That's not even possible. Not everyone in your audience hasn't even seen your offer. So what's like actually going on here, right? So I think that that's just a huge piece. Brittany says that's super helpful. I'm making 5-figure months, but I feel like my sales should be higher. And I don't know if it's an expectation issue or, like you said, not addressing objections to the silent lurkers. Well, huge congratulations on 5-figure months, Brittany. I think that's amazing. Listen, I think that that's how you find it out, right? Go speak to these people, go do some market research. And if you find a ton of objections there, amazing. Like you just learned a lot. If you do that and there's really none there, then yeah, that might not be the right problem to solve, but it would be so good to know still. So either way, it empowers you because you'll either know like, yes, I have this objection issue and I need to change it, or like, no, that's not my issue. So I think sometimes in business, we almost get, and this isn't a you thing, Brittany, this is a general thing, but I think sometimes in business, we almost get scared of like, yeah, but like, what if I try this and it's not the thing? Totally okay. That's kind of the point of all of this is testing and tweaking the little bits, and some of them will be the thing and some of them won't be, but you're really like fine tuning the machine that way. And that's when you get the best results. And so it's okay if you go down some, explorations that don't end up being the thing, right? There's nothing wrong with that. We're all going to do that in some regard. But it's so much better for it to be that little thing where you maybe spend like 3 hours doing some of these calls and then figure out what's really going on there versus, again, what we tend to do in entrepreneurship is like swing the pendulum all the way over here and like change our whole offer, spend hours and hours and hours updating all this stuff, and then like not even know what the difference maker was. So I think always worth it to, like find those little things and test them when they're happening, even if they end up not fully being it. It's still such a better question to be asking, which is like, oh, do I have objections that I don't know about versus like, oh, am I just doing it wrong? Or like, is my expectation wrong or what? Like, again, we get too broad versus like, well, let me just find out if this one little thing is true. And honestly, you guys, this also makes it, this is worth saying too, and then I'll stop. But yes, exactly. To be able to pinpoint that's to me so helpful. But this is what is also really helpful if you're coaching other people is be the person that's reminding them to go into the details. Like this is why I feel so empowered as a coach too, because I know that I will ask the micro questions that my clients maybe haven't stopped to think about. And I know I can be really, really, really useful to them in that way. Versus what I think happens sometimes as coach, we feel like we have to have an immediate answer. Pretty much all of my clients know I never have an immediate answer to anything. I have more questions always. Can't imagine what someone could ask me that I would have an immediate answer to without follow-up questions. But like not feeling that pressure for someone to come to you and be like, oh, like whatever, my sales page isn't converting or something, and be like, oh, okay, well, what we have to do to make a sales page convert better is da da da. I would be like, wait, I have a lot of questions, right? And then we can decide what that is. But it's just kind of remembering as a coach too, don't feel like you have to have an immediate answer, because then you become part of not solving the right problem, right? So permission to slow down and get detailed and ask the micro questions in order for you to be able to support your people way more. And again, that just helps everyone, because then they're seeing things that they couldn't, and you're able to give really, really impactful and effective support to them versus feeling like you just have to be responsive to everything, right? Because I think that we just feel that pressure sometimes. It's like, if someone comes to you and is like, I think Facebook's not working for me, and you're like, cool, we can come up with this whole Instagram plan. And maybe you totally can. And maybe you're so skilled at that, and like, it's all good, but just notice like that quick, like desire to react and respond versus the wait, what's actually going on here is what makes all the difference in coaching, right? Michelle says, this has totally inspired me to add an FAQ to my sales page to address the most frequent objections, since I get a lot of sales page views, but not as many calls. Going to double check this before I go down the wrong rabbit hole. Yes, Michelle, that's so good. And you can even add a section where it's like, if you've read this far and you're feeling like it's too high of an investment to make, here's what I want you to know. Like, you can be that explicit, basically, you know, with knowing the right thing. Like, if you know that's the objection, just call it out and say it. And honestly, most people will be really like, oh shit, how did she know I was thinking that, right? And it'll be a really impactful thing to add to your page. So yeah, don't be afraid to just kind of like go at it. Thank you, Brittany. Totally unrelated. Can you share how many hours a week you work in your business? Yeah, totally. I would say about 40. I mean, I track pretty closely, so I would say that's probably about right. It definitely varies though. I think, you know, I've certainly had weeks that have been, you know, quite a bit lower, and I've definitely had weeks where it's been a little bit higher too. But just to be clear, like, that's very by choice. Like, that is like by design, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, I like working. I like working often. I like having a full work day. I think obviously if I had other things in my life, like if I have children or whatever, I think that will probably change. But for right now, for me, that is like a very intentional decision that feels really good to me. I think even my team knows that that's my time goal. Like, we even have a time spreadsheet, and they know that I want my time to be hitting about that, because that's what feels just like most enjoyable to me right now. So anyway, I just wanted to caveat that, because I don't want it to seem like, oh, you have to work 40 or you have to work more or less or whatever. Like, that's just a personal desire for me right now. Especially this year. I think I talked about this in a separate live stream, but from, you know, again, like, right, it was basically this day almost, wasn't it, last year, maybe the day before, whatever, it doesn't matter, no one thinking about that. But anyway, from when, you know, COVID kind of started and we all went into lockdown to now, I've actually wanted to work more, just for the purposes of like, that's kind of what has felt good in my life and has kept me, you know, feeling good in the midst of some of this lockdown. The year before that, I worked a lot less than I ever have. Like 2019 was probably like the least by far that I've ever worked in my business. And it was just a different time in my life. Like, Kenny and I were dating, I was traveling a ton. So anyway, it just really depends, but that's what's right for me right now. I don't think that it will continue to always be, but that's where I'm at. Lana says, I'm not sure if I'll ask this clearly enough, but I'm trying to apply this micro questioning concept to what's coming up for me currently. I have a fairly high close rate, but what I'm noticing lately is I have less interest in general. So I thought, okay, maybe I need more visibility so that more people see me, get to know me, and engage with me. So I started showing up more in groups, and it doesn't seem to be making a difference? Am I asking the wrong questions or maybe choosing less than optimal methods of gaining visibility? Did that make sense? Yeah, totally makes sense. So I would say like you're still kind of doing the broad thing with the groups, if that makes sense. So it's more like, I'm showing up in more groups, but it doesn't seem to be making a difference. So I would go really granular with the group thing. Why not? Like, are people just not engaging with your content? Are they engaging, but they're not taking the next step to book calls? If not, why not? Like, what can we tweak in the messaging there? Are you engaging a lot in these groups too? Obviously, I talked about this at the very beginning. You might have missed this. So if you missed this part, I like went through a whole thread on like what to do if if it's not working in groups. But right, like, are you engaging a lot in groups? Because that makes a huge difference. So I would get really granular. Like, I think you're on the right track, right? Like, if you're like, well, I convert really well when I get calls, so I need to go out and get more calls. Great. Then get really detailed with that. Like, what's working in the groups, what's not. Am I getting engagement? Am I not? Do I need to engage more? Am I making enough offers for calls? Like, really get specific with that. But again, I did that at the beginning too around groups. So I actually do think that will be really helpful. But point being, you're totally on the right track. Now apply the granular approach to the group piece. Brittany says, I love that. So many people preach working less while making more, and it doesn't seem realistic. Oh my gosh, Brittany, I have so many thoughts on that. I think that there are seasons for both, if that makes sense. What I typically encourage clients to do is prioritize one at a time. It doesn't mean both can't happen, but I think it's really hard to prioritize both simultaneously. So, you might have a season where you're working a little more to get like a new offer off the ground, or, build a new income stream in your business. And then once that starts working really well, you might be able to pull back and work a little bit less, but it's like they happen in like a two-prong approach versus like just one thing at a time. Just both things at the same time. Sorry, I didn't say that right, but you get what I mean, right? Where it's like really hard to be like, how do I work way less and make way more immediately? Or for some of my clients, like, it's like, okay, I want to work less. So we make that work, right? We prioritize that first, we get their hours down, and then we worry about how to make more from there. But for me, it's like seasons. And I've always had seasons in my business of more or less. And again, it doesn't mean I have plenty of clients that are working 16 hours a week and making multiple six figures. It's not possible. It's just really hard to do all at the same time, because you can't make good decisions when it's all your priority. But if we can prioritize, let's get your hours way down, prioritize everything around that, and then move into, okay, let's increase the income from this stable set of hours. Totally different versus if we prioritize, let's make more. And so if that requires more time, it's fine. Then we can bring the hours back down. Anyway, so yes, I get what you're saying is my point. Which is that, yeah, it's totally possible to do both. And again, it's really hard to prioritize so many things at the same time. So that's kind of how I look at it. Yes, you're so welcome, Alana. Michelle says, I gotta go grab the kiddo, but this was so helpful. So pumped for Saturday's forum. Yes. Okay. So that's the last thing I have to tell you. If this was helpful, this is why coaching is really useful. So I want to invite you to our strategy forum, our Million Her forum. It's happening. Our strategy one is happening this Saturday, the 20th, from 10 a.m. to noon. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to go through how I think about strategy, how to actually look at things, and then mostly going to be answering questions and live coaching. So remember, if you have signed up and you have not yet filled out your strategy questionnaire, please make sure I get that. That is so helpful. So I have context so we can dive right into live coaching instead of me having to ask you 52 questions on the spot. So again, if you are signed up, I know there are a lot of you that are signed up that haven't filled out your questionnaire yet. So please make sure to get that to me. If you haven't signed up yet, we would love to have you. It's going to be so good. I'm going to do even more live coaching this time, I think, than I did for the mindset one, because that was like the number one piece of feedback I got from y'all is that you love live coaching. So I will definitely do more of that. Michelle still hasn't filled hers out. It's totally okay. It's totally fine. I mean, even if you fill it out like 2 days before or whatever, as long as I have time to read it beforehand, totally fine. But yeah, I'm going to do a little more live coaching this time, and it is going to be great, especially for strategy. I think like that personalized coaching is going to be really helpful and really impactful. But what I always am going to do and help you see is how I'm thinking about it. And so you can apply it to yours. So even if you're not the one getting live coached, it's still going to be really, really helpful for you because I'm teaching you how I think about strategy. Just like on this live today, I'm teaching you how I think about asking questions to clients as it relates to their strategy, and it starts to make sense so much more. So lituplife.com/million-her, million HER. Would love to have you guys there. It's going to be super great, and so grateful to you for listening. I know this is a really long live stream, but I love you all, and I hope you have a very happy week, and I will see you guys on Saturday. All right, bye y'all.